My name is Alex McCall. I'm the owner of XhilaRacing high-speed indoor karting in Florence, Kentucky. And it was, the company's been open for just over a year now, a year and 13 months. We opened the day after Christmas 2014. And it was about a 2-year project before we got to that point. I was in aviation. I was an airline pilot and retired after 18 years at an airline in 2012. So I was looking for something to do to run the rest of my working years out, and I thought this would be an interesting way to do it. I first got introduced to high-speed indoor karting at a small gas track in Indiana, and didn't even know anything like this existed. And once I started researching it, I saw that there was a market for it. It's something that a lot of people have never even heard of. The company was founded by myself and another employee from the airline where I was. He was actually my boss. He was the vice president of flight ops. I was the chief pilot, and we worked together for several years. And he was the one that introduced me to it. He took me to the small track, and at the end of the race he says, "Do you think that one of those would do well in Florence?" And I thought about it. Didn't really have the vision until I'd seen some of the bigger tracks around the country. But once we delved into it full blast, wrote a business plan, and I realized that there was probably potential here. We started the build out on our building in August of 2014, and at that point it was myself and the contractors that were working. As we moved along and got closer to the opening, we started acquiring our employees. Assistant track manager and our office manager came on board. As we got open, we needed a full-time mechanic, and so we have 4 full-time employees, and right now I think we have 10 part-time employees, and we've fluctuated a little above that, a little less than that, but right now 14 seems to be where we need to be. In 2014, we opened the day after Christmas, so we had a full week of operation during Christmas break, which is where we saw quite a few of our customers. We did about 40,000 in revenue at the last week of 2014. Last year's revenue, 2015, we saw about 600,000, and we're hoping to see a 10 to 20% increase on what we did last year. We have in the business plan, we actually have another track planned. We just have been focusing on this track. It's difficult to find a building in a place that is easily accessible and someplace that you don't have to spend so much money on advertising, because it's more visible to the public. And so you really have to concentrate on finding the right place, and that can take, it took almost 2 years for this first operation. But in the summer of 2014, we went through a branding process. We were originally, our LLC was originally Redline Racing, and we went through the branding program, and 3 weeks later we ended up with XhilaRacing and brand pyramid, and I think it actually has given us what we need to be a national brand if we'd like to franchise or open multiple tracks. The lessons that I learned, having actually gone through the planning stages to the startup, and now a year under our belt, a book is not even close to being big enough. It's a situation where living it and adjusting constantly for what's going on. The implementation is something that the sterile classroom cannot allow you to understand fully. my business plan actually was showing numbers that we're about half of what we had planned for our first year as far as financial, our revenue projections. But the build out, ended up being twice as much money. I spent a lot more money on the build out than I had originally planned. My business partner, one of the things that we had agreed on was that he was going to continue to work, but he would be at the racetrack when he could be. Didn't quite work out that way. You know, there were issues with the kart supplier, the kart manufacturer, the representation of the barrier system that we use. Some of these things just didn't work out the way that they were supposed to, and we, at the last minute being in the last maybe 90 days before we started the build out, we made some changes, and I wish we wouldn't have done that. I wish we would have stayed the course with what we had originally planned over the first year and a half that we were in the planning stages, because we were dealing with tried and true methods and process and procedure, and so that caused us some headaches also. I would, if I could do things slightly different, I would probably look at the original suppliers that we had scheduled to do some of the build out and supply the equipment for the business. We took a chance on some newly developed equipment, and it hadn't been tested to the point where it probably needed to be in a real life situation. We know that the karts in particular, the karts we were looking at originally, have been around for at least a dozen years, and the karts that we ended up going with were a brand new, they said it was a beta version of the kart that they had been running at tracks, but we ended up, I think, doing their beta testing, because we ended up finding out that it wasn't well suited for the track and the barrier system that we had designed. I would probably recommend that all of your suppliers, big or small, whether it's a $10 part or a $300,000 purchase, I would recommend getting everything in writing in a contract form, so that you have something at the end if it's not showing up on time, on schedule, you've got some recourse. That was one of the things we ended up signing the lease on the building, and had 3 months of free rent that was going to allow us to do the build out, and our contractor didn't hold up the process, but our suppliers did. We ended up being about 5 weeks late opening the doors for business, and that's substantial. This is kind of a cash cow, and unless you get the doors open, you're not making any money. And so we paid a month extra rent and overhead with employees that we were hiring, as well as utilities, everything that goes along with that. And it was a substantial amount of money to fork out without having the people coming in the doors. I would recommend plan some more. Go look at what you're going to do somewhere else and see how they're doing it. If you can get involved before you start down the road of opening your own business, if you can go work for that company, if you can get into it somehow to see the ins and outs, the everyday stuff that they're dealing with. The situation that we have with our building, we need a giant warehouse space up to 100,000 square feet. Ours happens to be about half that, but they're hard to find in a retail area without paying 3 times the rent that we happen to be here. But the difference in rent is probably needing to be spent in the advertising and marketing area here, because we're not that visible. We're literally 100 yards from all the people that we could probably ever take on a daily basis, but they don't know we're back here. And some of the planning and zoning issues in the county that we're in don't allow for signage or good visibility for what we've got going on. So it's difficult to get the awareness, to generate the awareness that we need to have the constant flow of traffic that we need. I feel like we've kind of been through the ringer the first year of business. I can probably think of 3 failures that I would consider to be somewhat significant. The first one would be a manager that we hired that he ended up being terminated after 30 days. Didn't know him, but he looked good on paper, had the credentials that we thought we needed, but he just wasn't a fit. So losing a manager within 30 days was probably a failure, but we were able to pick up from that. It was a team effort, but we got everything done that we needed to get done. Our carts, I've already talked about the mismatched carts for the barrier system that we have on the track. And they were very fast, very powerful. Everybody that has raced them, we've had professionals race our carts, they're very impressed with what we have, but they were probably too fast, and the general public just couldn't control them the way that we needed to, and we had massive damage going on. Within 3 days of opening the doors to business, we had over half of our carts down for damage, broken parts. Just we were trying to keep the carts together because it was a situation where, looking back on it, we should have had more speeds on the carts, and we should have used the slower speeds with a lot more people that hadn't proven their driving abilities. So coming back from that, I can remember in particular the night that half the fleet was down and we had a packed lobby and viewing area, and we thought we're going to have to shut the doors because we didn't have carts for them to ride anymore. But I just watched the movie The Martian, and Matt Damon said that space is going to kill you. It's trying to kill you everywhere, and you got to just solve one problem, and then you solve the next problem, and you solve the next problem, and pretty soon you're living. And that's what we did over about a month period of time. We ended up overcoming that situation. Lots of failures the first year that we learned from, and that's what you got to do. You learn from it and go on. I have no doubt that we could do this same project again in a much more efficient manner, and it wouldn't go the way that this first one did. If you are not resilient, if you cannot recover from failure, if you cannot think outside the box when you have a stressful situation, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. My former business partner, all he did was stress out and walk away from the situation. If you cannot recover in a situation that looks like you're going to fail, like truly fail, close the doors, file bankruptcy, whatever you've got to do. If you can't think beyond that, you don't need to be an entrepreneur. Every day I run into situations where I have to come up with a solution that 24 hours ago I wouldn't have even thought I had the problem. So you've got to roll with the punches. You got to continue to look down the road at what you know is a good idea. It took me probably a year after I wrote the business plan to really believe the business plan. And I've gotten to see everything that I believed in over the last year and a half, but it's still slow coming. Don't expect success immediately. That can be one of the most discouraging things to you. But know that with continued hard work, you're going to do fine. Our future right now is another 3 years in this building. That's when our lease runs out, but we have first rights to another 5-year term here. What we're kicking around is actually doing our own building in a higher visibility area, so that the awareness, and again, we're building awareness every day, but moving after we're established, I don't think is going to be that big of a deal, but I think we'd still like to be in a higher visibility area. We've had several people talk about potential investment as a franchise track, something like that, and we've looked at other cities to potentially expand into.